floor amendment that would allow an opt-out for teachers and parents for their children.
Thank you very much. Representative McDermott.
I second the motion, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the proposed floor amendment number 15, Representative Ward?
Thank you, Speaker. I rise in support of the amendment.
In support of the amendment, please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, this body has been accused of not listening to the people. This body has been accused of having an inability to listen to particularly one group in one gender. I call them the mama bears. Those were the women who time after time shouted out, in addition to protect our churches, protect our keiki. We're in Hawaii. Aloha and keiki are almost sacred concepts. So on behalf of the mama bears, I want to repeat what I said the other day. I want to be very clear of what they said to us and very clear of what this bill is about. This bill is about equality, but people contend it's not about education. Because what we've learned from other places, Mr. Speaker, is that after same-sex marriage comes the curriculum revolution. Massachusetts, Canada, et cetera, and they say, well, that's not true, it's not going to happen here. And I said yesterday, which by the way, we didn't have on television, and we said it was Olalo's fault. Speaker, you know the Capitol TV is in the purview of you and the Speaker, and the reason why the people of Hawaii didn't hear that, I know I'm meandering, but I want the people to know they didn't hear yesterday about these debates, and some of you are going to complain because I'm going to be repetitive, but the people were blocked from hearing the debate yesterday because you guys didn't allow it to happen. Okay, in continuation, sir, in continuation, I said you don't have to go to the moon to prove it's there. We don't have to go to Massachusetts to see their curriculum. We don't have to go to Canada to see their curriculum. We have to look to see that it's going to happen if it's happened in these other places, unless we are a unique planetary exception to this. My point, Speaker, is that evidence was not believed. They said this is not an educational bill. We'll take that up later. But the mama bears are crying out. I said the mama bears are demanding, protect our kids. And lo and behold, what has popped up? I want my brother from Laie to help me pass this thing out, because this is the first onslaught, if you will. The first indication, the first maybe tip of an iceberg, of which is an empirical-based thing, and please don't shut me down.
Point of order. We have a recess, please.
A recess, Speaker.
Recess subject to the call of the chair.
According to Mason's rules, when someone has the floor,
Will the House come to order? Representative Ward.
Mr. Speaker, may I continue?
Yes, please continue,
Mr.
Representative.
Speaker, I think I ended somewhere about you don't have to go to the moon to prove it's there.
Correct.
We have some evidence of an emerging curriculum, something that's being tested, something whose purpose, if you would look at, I believe it's page 2, and it's good curriculum, except it needs some nuancing in the interpretation of it, some clarification. The Pono Choices, as it is called, is a 10-module curriculum that provides young adolescents, and this is particularly the 7th grade, 12 to 13, when you reach puberty. That's the class that it's in now. It gives them knowledge, attitudes, skills that are necessary to reduce the risk of sexually transmitted diseases or sexually transmitted infections, STIs, and pregnancy. And it goes on in detail. The proponents of the developers of this are the Berkeley Policy Associates, Hawaii Department of Education, Planned Parenthood of Hawaii, and Alolike. If my colleagues would turn to page, I believe it's page 3, where it says what schools are being impacted, or let's say treated. This is where the experience of this curriculum that probably not too many people are aware of. It's Aliumanu Middle School, Highlands Intermediate, Hilo Intermediate, Iao Intermediate, Kapolei Intermediate. You guys can read it all. And the charter schools, Hawaii Academy of Arts, Sciences, Science, Waters of Life, et cetera, et cetera. The point is, Mr. Speaker, this thing is pretty well circulated, and it's on a pilot basis, which is good. They're going to basically measure the effects of it, et cetera. Now, this is probably good because kids need to know about sex. No question about it whatsoever. What may be questionable and what may be presumptive about it is when we go to the page 11. Everybody please go to page 11. Page 11 is when it actually meets at the student level when there are things called worksheets. The worksheets on the Pono Choices has a Pono Relationships worksheet. If you look at the worksheet, it has 3 different scenarios. This is the case study method. The first 2 case studies are heterosexual and one is homosexual. No big deal.
Representative Johansson, will you yield your time?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I yield
Thank
my
you
time.
very much, Representative.
Thank you, Representative Johansson. No big deal. 2 heterosexual relationships, 1 homosexual. Well, okay, it's appearing, but then the category of the heterosexual relationships is categorized as, quote, unhealthy. Heterosexual relationships, unhealthy. It just happens that the homosexual relationship is called healthy. Is that a bias? Well, does that say anything? Well, maybe not much. But then, Mr. Speaker, and this is not a smoking gun, but when you get to the other worksheets, which I call YAMLs, I've been training entrepreneurs, and we always have YAMLs. We've done about 3,000 graduates in 10 countries. And YAML is the sacred thing, yesterday's most important learning. The equivalent of a YAML is a reflection square which was brought into the classroom here. Where it was, I have no idea. The learning of the day was as follows. Oral sex, mouth on genitals. Vaginal sex, penis enters vagina. This is the student saying what they learned that day. 3, anal sex, penis enters anus. Mr. Speaker, this is, again, it's not heavy, it's not a smoking gun, but it shows that something regarding what's going on in Massachusetts, what's going on in Canada, seems to be emerging, seems to be evolving, seems to be present in this curriculum. And it's something that the mother bearers say, hey guys, okay, same-sex marriage, okay, but let's not have it go into the school system. And I know somebody will stand up and say, well, look, we have an opt-out policy. There's some controversial things about some parents who have opted out of this. I'm not going to go into those details. They're doing it with the DOE probably now. But Mr. Speaker, we got to give the mama bears some breathing room. Ideally, this gives the body an opportunity to amend this bill and say, look, don't worry about it. We got your churches covered. We got your kids covered. Let's just get on with it. And if the vote maintains the same as it is, and without any amendments, these people are going to be very angry, Mr. Speaker. They're going to say, you listened to us, but you didn't do anything about it. So I just bring that curriculum as new information that I added the other day to my floor speech, from where otherwise we amend, where teachers can opt out, parents can opt out, and this is something that I heard very loud and very clear from the people of Hawaii. Mr. Speaker, I think we are compelled to pay attention. Otherwise, as some call it, a sleeping giant, mother bears who are looking after their cubs are mother bears looking after the cubs. And I didn't even mention the papa bears yet. I didn't mention the Tanari Ma'afalas and the others with great intensity want to make sure that what we're going to do is Pono, even though that's what they've called this thing. We got to do what's Pono. We got to unite these groups up here. We got to live with each other, people. We've got to get beyond this, I'm for, I'm against, you're this, you're that. We got to unite people, Speaker. We as leaders have to project this unity. We have to get legislation that doesn't tie those groups up there in court, or shouting at each other, or fighting at each other, or making bullying remarks to each other, or bullying their kids in school. Speaker, we got to address this issue on behalf of the Mama Bears. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative McDermott.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, to continue on to what my colleague was saying,
In support of the floor amendment.
in support of the floor amendment, but I will vote against the underlying measure, the bill, if it comes to the floor. Mr. Speaker, page 11, there are 3 scenarios as he discussed, and one of the 3 is a homosexual relationship. That would lead us to believe that 33% of the population, as it's being presented, are actually people who engage in homosexual behavior. Scenario 1 is unhealthy. It's a heterosexual behavior. It's described as unhealthy. Scenario number 2 is a male-on-male homosexual behavior, which is described as quote-unquote healthy by the student who took the class. So I'm not going to make any judgments, because who am I to judge? But I would refer the members to the National Institutes of Health to review the statistics on male-on-male sex and make their own determination if it is a healthy activity. Scenario number 3, the relationship is a heterosexual relationship, and it is considered abusive. So we seem to have a inculcation of our youth here. Now, granted, it's a pilot project, and I believe the parents were made aware of it prior. But this is the nose of the camel under the tent. And Mr. Speaker, we do have a current policy. Well, many people said it's not the curriculum. Well, this is a pilot project for future curriculum, and it misrepresents the behavior, in my view, and the quantitative analysis of the representation. But Mr. Speaker, we have a current policy in place on controversial issues. And much to the members' chagrin, I need to refer back to my Dick and Jane books. Now, they're not called Dick and Jane books anymore, but they're used as illustrations to amplify the curriculum contained therein. Mom and Dad getting in a car, spot the dog. The names and faces have changed, but the principles are the same, Mr. Speaker. Parents need protection, because it takes one individual who's adopted a child to file a lawsuit, a homosexual couple to file a lawsuit and say, you know, you don't have any illustrations of my family in any of these books. By not having our family in those books at the 3rd grade, the 4th grade, the 5th grade, the 6th grade, you are creating an environment where my child feels prejudiced. My child feels excluded. It's a hostile learning environment for my child. It takes one judge, just one, and I think, Mr. Speaker, we can find one here in Honolulu, who would say, you're absolutely right, and strike down the controversial issues policy and mandate that this type of curriculum is in our schools, and there is no opt-out. And if you go to the principal and say, I'd like to opt out, you will not be called by the principal, but you will be perceived in the community as a hater, bigot, homophobe. There's no opportunity to have an intellectual disagreement on this issue, Mr. Speaker. None. You're hater, bigot, homophobe, or ignorant. Those are the options you have. Trust me, I know they've been shared with me. So, Mr. Speaker, current curriculum doesn't have it, but here's a pilot project. The camel's nose is now under the tent. It's coming. If we don't institute protections, parents will lose their rights to this newly created civil right. Mr. Speaker, it takes one judge to do this. One judge. And anyone to say that it won't happen. I told you before, and I will tell you again, sir, I will bet my house, that within 10 years, this will be the case if this bill passes. There's no doubt about it, Mr. Speaker, none. In California, they actually mandate it, Senate Bill 48, they have to change all their books. They haven't done it yet because they don't have any money. But in their curriculum, they have to emphasize, if, say, a composer like Mozart, I don't know if he was gay, but if he was gay, it has to be part of the curriculum. Oh, he wrote these 9 wonderful symphonies, and by the way, he was gay, a homosexual male, and he made wonderful contributions. They actually want to publicize his private behavior. It's a private behavior, Mr. Speaker. It's not an immutable, benign genetic characteristic. Again, it is not an immutable, benign genetic characteristic. It's a private behavior. So, Mr. Speaker, the camel's nose is under the tent. The parents need protection. And I urge my members to support this for the parents, for the children. The evidence, it's right here. Please. Thank you.